good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. Whichever part of the world and whatever time zone you are in, thank you for joining us for the 2021 edition of the Black Consciousness Festival. This year, we are inviting you to shift. Join with amazing people across the world as we explore the many ways we, as people of African descent, grow, cultivate, produce, share, and rebirth ourselves. Through our ancestral knowledge, historical legacy, pride, power, and practice, let's celebrate the individual and collective ways we navigate through life. Together, we continue to walk in pride, power, and practice. Enjoy the session.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good night, depending on wherever in the world you are. It is my pleasure to introduce this conversation today, Indigenous Perspectives on Climate Change. And my job here today is to introduce the conversation lead, Ruth Osman, a Guyanese singer-songwriter and flautist based in Trinidad and Tobago. She is a poet disguised as a songbird, according to Caribbean Beat magazine. She's been writing music and poetry since childhood, drawing from her lived experience as a Caribbean woman of mixed heritage and from the rich worlds that she encountered in books and in her father's favorite musicals. Her music, usually performed with her band Love Warriors, has been described as profound, entrancing, and authentic. And her sophomore album, Elemental, was dubbed a 10-track gem by the Trinidad Guardian. Osman, who's also a writer, says that her inspiration comes from the desire to help us connect with each other and with the transcendent beauty of the human experience. We welcome Ruth, and she will introduce the other members of this conversation today. Enjoy.
Thanks so very much, Sean. Thanks for having me facilitate this conversation. And our two participants, the two people who I will be speaking with this afternoon, when I read their bios and I just did, little Google search, I was inspired and amazed at the work that they have already done and that I'm sure they'll continue to do. Our first speaker is Sabanatho Corrie-Edghill. Sabanatho is a member of the Pukuri Tribal Territory Indigenous community in Guyana. Sabanatho, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. She's a youth activist and an artist, and she created the first Lakono Arawak mural consisting of her people's mythological creatures located in her tribal lands. I will bring on now Carson Kiburo, and then we're going to talk to you, Sabanatho and Carson. Carson is a youth leader of the Indigenous in Rice. And a community organizer who works on Indigenous people's rights, youth empowerment, and global governance. He is co-founder and executive director of, tell me if I'm pronouncing this right, Carson, Jami Asilia Center. Niceness, a youth-led nonprofit focusing on climate change, biodiversity, agropastoralism, and their nexus in intergenerational knowledge systems sharing.
Thank you so much.
I'm tempted to ask you how old you are, but I'm not going to do that. You both look glowing and young and like you've now started your lives, and I'm in awe. Thank you so much for being here, Sabanatho and Carson.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. So I'm going to start the ball rolling in terms of who I am and what I do. Like Sean would have said, I'm Guyanese, based in Trinidad. I'm what you consider an artist, singer, songwriter, poet. As a Caribbean woman of Afro and East Indian heritage, I have longed for a sense of place, like a connection to land and a sense of place. So I'm in awe and enthralled by people like yourselves who have a heritage that is so closely tied to place, to nature, to world, because some of us don't have that. We've lost it over the centuries due to slavery, colonialism, etc., etc. We know the stories. So I'd like to start by asking each of you, tell me a bit about yourselves, but also let's talk a bit about yourselves in the context of your place, your legacy. You know, who are you the son and daughter of? Where is your place? Where did your people come from? Let's talk about that. We can start with you, Sabanto.
Okay, so for me, my mother is Guyanese, Lokono Arawak, and my father is Lokono also, but by descent through his grandmother. But for me, I tie more closely to my mother's tribe because I visited them every year at least once growing up. Um, and as you become an adult and you see how things are, you get to understand a lot more than just being Indigenous. The backstories, and I never saw my grandmother as Afro-Indigenous, but she is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for her mother and father passed early, and she was kind of orphaned. But my grandfather's parents adopted her into their family, and to keep her there so that she had a support system, she married one of their sons, and they grew to love each other, and they had 7 children. And my mother's one of
Wow.
them.
Wow. And where was this? Like which part of Guyana?
Region 4, St. Cuthbert's Mission, which is also called Pakri. It's in Demerara Berbice area. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just up the Linden Highway. We are the only Indigenous tribe in the Region 4 who still holds their tradition and has a right to sovereign land.
Wow. Wow. So many questions, but we'll get back to that. Thank you for that origin story of sorts. Carson, tell me about yourself.
Thank you so much, Ruth, and thank you for making it very welcoming and warm to be here. I feel privileged to share my story, which is not as rich as for my sisters, Sabanda, but I will say it again. My name, as you've seen, I have a colonial name and the other name, Kiburo, and the Kibet. Um, those are government names. But the middle name, which you see right there, the second name, it gives me a lot of power, gives me lots of heritage and ancestral power, because I can trace it to my sixth generation grandfather, so of whom I am named after, and that would be over 400 years ago. In my clan, we're just less than 10 who are named after with this name, and everywhere that you would see someone with this name, obviously there would be my clan.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's the name. And when I asked my father about this man, why I was named after, he told me that he used to roam around. That's what the story that they had from his ancestors as well. That ancestor used to roam around with large herds of cattle. And at that time they used to practice lots of what we call cattle rustling. It's like where you raid another community to get lots of. It was kind of a
Ah,
fun activity, that. Yeah, it used to be lots of fun, and they would use. So he was rich, but that's a story I know. But the most important thing for us, as you've heard from the introduction from Ruth about myself, we are predominantly a pastoralist community. Pastoralists are people who keep livestock, but we are slowly over the last five decades we've changed, and we have practiced subsistence farming where we include, and that's why we are changing into agro-pastoralism. Pastoralism will never end because we keep livestock, which is cows, goats, and sheep. it will never end for us, because, and if it ends, it means the end of us. This is the reason why, because it's linked to, it's our food sovereignty, um, cultural sovereignty, cultural heritage, sort of. Our ways of life is linked to the life of a cow. We where our people would praise, their bulls and name after. For example, my grandfather had a name, had someone compose a song, and obviously a name, a baptismal name. It's a rite of passage where you would have a bull named after you. You praise your own bull and name it, and that would be your baptismal name. It's a rite of passage, and then you get into elderhood and all that. And when I get to our village, the villagers call me that name.
Ah,
They call me that name. You wouldn't know even how to pronounce a very long indigenous name, and so that heritage gives me a very strong connection to my people. And from my mother's side, I'll tell you a story about how people, before we get into lots and lots of indigeneity,
mhm.
we have that link between the nature and our livestock goes beyond actually the nature. It even goes to the galaxy, the sun, the moon, whereby
Right.
we preserve the flora and fauna, the ecological biodiversity, by giving our clans what we call totems or symbols. So each clan, about I think it's 9 clans that we do have, and we are a small community, not more than 60,000 people, not more than 60,000. Each clan has a totem. So, for example, my father's family, their clan, which is my clan now, because we are we used to be a patriarchal society where we identify with the men. And so my father's family, which is identifies with the moon. And so we are the people of the moon. When the moon shines, we say, yeah, that's our family shining for everyone, not to do evil, but to flourish and do the right thing, even in the dark of the night. And my mother's family is from a clan that identifies with a crane, this kind of a beautiful bird that feeds in swamps and marshy areas. I wish I had a photo that I would put in my background. You'd see, and it's so beautiful. And those are my uncles. Everyone in that clan, I must call them uncle. And how I take care of that animal as well. So we interlink it. I have to take care of that bird, and with my grandmother's family is from my grandmother, the grandmother who bore my father. Uh, uh, their family uses the totem of the buffalo. And so you see how we link the galaxy, the whole universe, the ecological biodiversity into one thing, for the preservation of the humankind and nature to live together in harmony. And some other um, some clans would use like hyenas, or for example, the sun. There are those who identify with the sun, and the sun is very sacred to us. We pray towards the east when the sun rises. It is interlinked. There are those who uses the elephant. So I hope we get to that. I don't want to talk too much. Let me get it back to you, Ruth. Yes, thank you.
But thank you for that. There's so much there that I wasn't aware of, and yet so many commonalities in the, and I'm sure that Sabantho could point to some similarities in terms of using or seeing nature and parts of nature in ways that you then use to reinforce community and identity and family. Um, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that because I mean, Carson has sort of delved into some of what I was hoping we'd be able to go into. So Samantha, if you don't mind, um, talking to us about not just the connection of your people to the environment and to the natural world, but how do they see it? How do they view it? What is world for them? What does that mean?
Yeah. So the world for them is, it's pretty much their surroundings, their environment, which is still full of forests and animals, because most of my people do not leave our lands, and they will stay there and farm and hunt to provide for their families and fish. And in my community, we have quite a lot of biodiversity.
Right,
Um,
right.
I am not knowledgeable on a lot of it, but every time I go somewhere with my mom, she's like, "Oh, you know that plant? You can use it for this. You can make a shelter with this." And I'm just like, "Mom, why didn't you tell me about this stuff?" If I was lost in the forest, I'd probably die. I don't know.
Right, 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 right.
But there
So,
are some stuff that was shared with me, like for instance, the material that we make our traditional regalia from. It's
right.
from a palm tree, and they climb all the way up. The man climbs and he cuts down the branches, and we boil it and we peel it, and then we braid it to make our clothes, and then also just
Wow,
decorations for the house. Yeah, and I
wow.
think that palm is also why we named our village Pakuri after that tree, because it was so
Oh,
abundant in those times. Yeah.
I did not know that. As a Guyanese, thank you for that
Yep.
wonderful piece of information. Um, um, so what about things like, and again, as a Guyanese, right? I know about these things, but very, very sort of surface,
Yeah.
at the surface level. So I know about cassava, and I know how important that is as a staple.
It is. Yeah.
Um, and I know about piwari. Um, but so let's talk a little bit about that. What are some of the So there's the palm, there's cassava, there's
Mhm.
piwari, which is made from
From cassava.
cassava juice, right?
Yes.
I wasn't
After we
100%
strain
sure.
out the poison. Yeah.
Right, right. And you said there's hunting and fishing,
Hunting and fishing.
and so those are the ways in which your people more or less sustain themselves.
Yes. Yes. And
Understood.
recently with climate change, the dry seasons have been longer, so farming is a lot less and unpredictable. So providing for families is becoming a lot harder these days. So you see a lot of
Mm-hmm.
migration towards the cities to
Right,
provide, to be able to afford to take care of their families when the land
right,
cannot yield what is needed.
right. Was your community affected by the recent floods? There was a flood
Yes.
earlier this year.
Yes,
It,
normally it would flood in the community maybe every other year, and now every year continuously it happens, and sometimes in unpredictable times as well. And a lot of our people live close to the river base,
mhm.
and that's the majority of the area where farms are as well. So then all the produce is gone. Um,
Right.
yeah, over time we will learn how to handle it, but right now it's really new, so it's hard. It hurts our people.
Understood. Understood. Carson, what are some of the ways in which climate and the way it has changed? What are some of the ways in which that affects your people and your community?
Well, growing up, um, over the last, let's say, I got conscious about the issues that we faced, and I can easily now say that it's due to climate change, and it's been a conversation within my people's um, land or around where we live. We used to have lots and lots of or herds of cattle or livestock, but because of the, I wouldn't say diminishing resources like land, but because of the changing changing climate. We used to have two major seasons, the rainy season and the dry season. And
Yeah.
according to the ways of our people, and I have a story that is captured that I wrote in our website, I will share with our viewers here. Uh,
Yeah.
about how we used to do that. We used to our elders would close a certain part of the community for grazing, and they had this sort of big rangelands. They would say for these 50 these 200 acres right now, we will graze our livestock for the next maybe 5 months, or 4 months this quarter, or the next quarter we use here, the next quarter we use here. But now that is unreliable, and we've had to cut down the number of livestock that we keep. And that means also cutting down, also losing part of our culture, because we can practice what we used to practice. We still have the land, but we don't have the grazing, the grass, or the dry lands that we used to do the paddocks. I don't know if I'm using the right term. And we lost water points, because also our people have contributed to this. We used to cut trees to create more land for farming, especially cash cropping. And we've been made to believe that this is the shortcut to having, or even this is the way to getting more money, which is the wrong thing. We should have learned to do the subsistence farming, but not moving towards these large scale farming, which destroys the environment. And
Right.
we've now seen that we lost water, uh, springs that used to give water to our livestock or for household use, and now we have dry river banks that are useless. Today we were having a conversation. We don't live with my mom; she lives in our village, but I live in the city because of work related stuff. But we have a conversation almost every day, my mom and my dad. Today I had a conversation with my mom, and she was telling me how they struggle with to get water and pasture for our livestock. Remember, I told you we've had to scale down to even uh, manageable herds. But right now, even those small herds, we cannot be able to manage them, because even if we try to adapt and stay resilient, they still die and they get emaciated. They no longer get enough pasture. But that is not even the greatest threat. The threat is a loss of livelihood. We don't have. We're moving away to these money markets that the world is forcing us to get into, and living the ways of our people, living the ways our social, the way we used to get to live our livelihood, sort of. And I can easily say that it's due to climate change, that our ways of lives, our ancestors' ways, which have made us stay resilient and to stay with all these cultures, rich cultures. We're losing them. We're losing a millennia of culture due to climate change. I can show you. There's a scar that I have right here. I got it. If you can see, I got it 8 years when I was at 8 years of age, because we had gone to a dry riverbed with my mom and other several mothers to do laundry there, because the water would not reach our village downstream. And so we would go upstream where there was still some wet sand, and our people would dig deep into the riverbed, and then they would get water. Each family would have lots of those duck. They dig holes, and then you get water out of those. Uh, I would say, I don't know what to call them. It's like a borehole, and then you give to your livestock and you use for something. So we had gone with my mother, and we were waiting for her to finish washing our clothes, or our clothes. We were still young with my brother and other kids and other mothers, of course, from the village. And of course, being the mischievous and super active or hyperactive baby boy, she couldn't control me, and then I was just playing around, climbing trees, and unfortunately I held a dead, or a twig, a dead branch, and I fell down from like 6 feet all the way down, crashing into some stones, and I was I was in a coma for more than 12 hours, only waking up
Wow.
about 80 kilometers away from home in a district hospital 12 hours
Wow.
later. And my mom was like, oh, he's still alive, because she thought I was dead. So that
Wow.
story made me think deep and try to um, revitalize and transmit whatever we still have to the future generations, irrespective of the changes that we see within our environment. And revitalizing means that we adapt and stay resilient during these hard times of these most defining times of the climate change, and to see our community where I grew up, and our entire nation, our people, moving, being resilient, and staying, preserving and transmitting our cultural ways of lives to the next generation. Like I have this name that is of 400 years ago. It should move to give the story to the next generation and the next generation, because we have a contribution to the humankind as any other race or any other people, such as you or our listeners who are listening right outside there. So I guess that's sort of
Mhm.
answers that question, Ruth.
It does. It does. Thank you for that. Thank you for that story. And you're right in the way you talked about the responsibility that each community has. It's a responsibility to their community and to their future generations, but it's also a responsibility to humanity, because we forget that our future resides in diversity. Our future depends on you being allowed to be you and having your culture and having your heritage. Sabanto, same thing for you and your people, because there's so much that we can learn from each other. There's so much that each community has that it can give to humanity in general. I
Yeah.
mean, I wouldn't know how to survive in a space where I had to dig into a dry riverbed for water, but your people do, you know. And Samantha, I definitely do not know how to climb a palm tree. I've heard and seen that is like a specialist art, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can testify to that. But there's skill sets that have been developed over centuries, and in some cases thousands of years of living in a particular space, and getting to know it intimately, and developing the technologies that enable you to live and thrive in that space. And from what both of you are saying, it seems as if that that knowledge that is a gift to humanity is also being lost. Um, Sabantha, Sabantho, is it Sabantho or Sabantha?
Samantha.
Sabantho. My apologies.
That's fine.
I was macoing. Mako is a Trini word for being fast, which is a Guyanese term, right? So I was checking out your Facebook page, and I saw that you put up a post maybe about a day or 2 days ago about a visit that you had made with your father. Was it your father that you had
Yes.
made to a minister in Barbados? And
Yes.
the post, it made the hairs on my arm stand up. It was so rich, and it said to me, it pointed to what you're really trying to do. Um, and it's linked to what Carson has been talking about. It's linked to legacy and the continuation of legacy. It's linked to telling the story of your people. It's linked to drawing connections. So tell us a bit about what happened 2 days ago and what that work entails.
Yes. So, through friends and conversation with the government, my father was invited to an interview, and they asked if he could bring somebody that also belonged to our tribe. So he said that he would bring his daughters. And me being involved in that kind of area was a really good part, because while we were talking, maybe some things were lost in translation, which I brought up and cleared up so that the ministers could know all that they wanted to know. And so the minister said that right now is the time with Barbados turning into a republic for us to, finally include Indigenous voices in the Caribbean, starting with Barbados. Yeah, because in our history books, we are still taught that Amerindians, Carib, Taino, Arawak, Kalinago no longer exist. But you can see clearly in Dominica, they still have tribes. They still have land, as small as it might be. They still have their culture, but they are, and the rest of us are often left out of conversations when it comes to the governmental point. So Minister of Culture said that he wants to push for us to somehow have a seat at the table, as well as to help with Indigenous film in the Caribbean and Barbados. Yeah, which my father is working on right now, and he said that he is all in, and he wants to see this come to fruition and to see what more we can do together. As well as that, Barbados for a while has been saying that they wanted to start like an Arawak Amerindian village to show our history, bring in some people from Guyana, from different tribes to help build it in a correct way. And that has been paused because of COVID, most likely.
Right.
But with some more information and more people at the table, we can do it and do it in a location where Amerindians actually would have lived, which would have been close to freshwater springs or streams and infertile land. So we're hoping that continues. The promise has been made, so it's just to watch and see.
What
and also to eventually host Indigenous Caribbean events, conferences in Barbados. Yeah.
Wow.
And we are hoping to, with Minister as well, he says he's hoping to start a domino effect for the rest of the Caribbean to recognize the Indigenous groups, even if they no longer exist, like they no longer have lands, but I know that they do still exist, whether they are mixed with other cultures. It doesn't take away their indigeneity. And for when, just like in the States or in Europe, in Canada, every time the government officials start a conference, they pay respects to the tribe and the people whose land they are on. And it's about time that we start that in the Caribbean as well.
Agreed. And understood. Thank you so very much for that. If you don't mind, I didn't really plan to go down this particular road. But tell me some more about the work that your father is doing. It seems that you're very much walking in the footsteps of the work that your parents would have done or have been doing. So tell me a little bit about that, please.
So my father, back in the day, like his life's work is this. Back in the day, started teaming up with the other Indigenous people in the Caribbean, and then in North America, in Central America, South America, and they came up with the first Indigenous rights draft, which has gone through. So he's part of that work, but mostly he advocates for wrongs happening in their territories on a global level. He's more of a writer, a rights writer. Yes.
Right.
Growing up in this, it just seems so normal, so natural to me. So whenever I talk about this with people and they are blown away, to me, it's just like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I'm not more of the talking person. I'm more of a writer as well. So this interview is a bit out of my comfort zone, but it's so necessary, and I understand that.
I could imagine, but you're doing it graciously and gracefully. So thank you. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
being open to the experience.
No problem.
Yeah. So we're talking legacy then. We're talking um people who are following in the work of their ancestors, who are continuing the work um of the people who came before them. And if we're talking about the work, I know that Carson, I'm not sure, Sabanto, if you attended the COP 26.
No, I did not.
Um, okay, but I know Carson, I know that you did. And I know that that would have entailed quite a lot of work. So talk to us about that. What was COP 26 like? I mean, we've read the news reports. The media was inundated with what didn't happen that should have happened, and a sense of betrayal almost, for the people on the ground who were expecting their leaders to, well, not expecting, let's face it, but hoping that their leaders would move in a particular direction. But you were there, and I'm assuming that you were there on behalf of your people. So what was that experience like for you? What was COP 26 like for you?
Well, Ruth, you're giving me a. I have the burden to explain something that is so big. It was surreal experience being there. It was the first time for me, but also I got to learn because I'd been following up the process for the last, let's say, three COPs. I'd been following up the process, and the conference, it's popularly known as UNFCCC, or United Nations Conference on Climate Change, but it's the reason why it's called COP is Conference of Parties. So this is the Conference of Parties number 26. They've been trying to negotiate to bring down the warm the degrees, or the average degrees that the planet is warming. And like you said, I'm really glad that you had been following, and I hope most people had been seen on their, they saw it on their screens. I can sum it up by saying I wondered why our leaders would not agree. They're like, they came from, all these leaders came from different planets. Yeah, some came from Earth, some came from Mars. I wonder why they behaved like that. Because we live in this planet. Why should we negotiate? Really? I guess it's because of the imperial and colonial effects that we see. It's important to mention that when you see the big states like the US, the China, or even Russia, or India, uh, India this week, and this is something that is very heavy. And even in China, they have ghost cities. They do have ghost cities where people left the city because of the expansive industrialization that has destroyed the atmosphere, where people would have to work with masks, or
Mm.
they had to leave the street, their towns or those cities. Same to India. And those are the two states that said that they were adjusting their 2050 targets all the way to 2070 or 2000, that saying that we believe that we can try this. By that time, probably we wouldn't be having humanity. And mark my words, I'm using the word humanity because the planet would still remain, and we will get go away, and we will probably will have other species, but it's because of the future generations of humanity that we're fighting for, and to make sure that we live, to pass it on to the future generations. Remember, that's what I said, because for me, that representation, I see every human society uh, always want to give something to their future generations, unless those who have worshipped these overproduction and overconsumption that has warmed the planet. Okay, so it was very it was a funny scenario. I was hungry. I couldn't understand why we people talked about simple text, a comma, or for example, for India, they, I think it's a cup, was it cup, 5 years ago, they are the ones who actually pushed for the text that would do away with coal, um, uh,
Mhm.
coal as a way of producing
Right,
energy.
right.
And this year they wanted to adjust the text to phase, instead of phase out, they said phase down.
Ah, ah,
PHASE, phase
wow.
out. Since so phase down, that is like saying, instead of running, let's walk.
Yeah,
So what
yeah,
will happen?
yeah,
What will
yeah.
happen? We will lose everything, and it will get several states. I believe even several states in Caribbean. You've seen the water rising levels, but we've seen in Asia Pacific region affected more than any other region. The island states or least developed states,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
they are literally submerged or are sinking, and that is they would say they don't see that happening. For me, where I come from, we've seen how water lake systems. We have two lakes. We have two lakes that were formed through the volcanic and geological things that I can't explain right now.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last 9 years, the water in these lake systems have been rising, water rising levels every year in, here out. And this year was the worst. Last year and this year, let's say the last 2 years, displacing um, over, I would say it's almost over 5,000 people,
Wow.
and over 18 schools, primary and secondary schools. So for me, it's personal. It is
Right.
personal because I've seen how people being displaced by the actual climate change, and we have done some studies, including my own organization. We've done some studies, and lots of other studies that have been done. It's due to human activities, like for example, geothermal power. And no one wants to talk about including the government because it's sort of a green energy, but then again, it's disturbing the
Yeah.
geological structure of the planet, as well as so many other issues. And these are things that the community sees. It has never happened through our oral history. No one knows when that happened before. We knew
Wow.
that this was the level of the lake. This was the level. So we have graves of our ancestors that have been buried, have been submerged in waters. We will never see them again. Um, so you see that, and
Mm-hmm.
we're losing parts of our heritage, we're losing our land, we're losing our livelihoods, and and so at the COP, those voices, those experiences kept me going. It's a fast-paced world in a fast-paced discussions, and it was first time for me. So I was trying to learn the process of the lobbying. Probably you need to talk to a minister of your country. You need to talk to um, maybe a congressman in the US who is a friend of
Right.
your friend, those kind of things, so that you try to pass down the message. And for us as indigenous peoples and local communities who have been affected heavily, and they are on the front lines of climate change, or the disaster, the scourge of climate change, we were fighting to see that they retain the human rights text on 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 Article 6 of the Paris
Mm-hmm.
Agreement. And member states wanted to get to bring the member states, or the parties, they're known as parties in COP or
Right.
COP26. They were not committed to having the human rights text in Article 6.2 and 6.4, where we would see the indigenous peoples and other rural communities who are affected by climate change to get even to be able to adapt, to be able to stay resilient and to catch up with these rich nations that have used the colonial structures to warm the planet, and now they have
Right.
resources and they still do that over and over. So it was sort of ironical that we were in the colonizers land, and yet we see that we see everything happens, and we're not at the table, because even our governments are there, and they're not like as committed as they should be. They have other alliances with these states, for example, military alliances, and so their hands are tied somehow. And we are
Right.
not negotiators in a way. We are just lobbyists. So that was my experience. And when they agreed somehow, we hope that that was retained, the human rights text in Article 6. And my I give a huge shout outs to those who have come before me and who know the system, and they've been working very hard. That they
Right.
worked hard to do to see this retained. And the greatest thing that we will be doing now is on COP27. We want to
Mhm.
see the part of loss and damage being looked into, and
Right.
especially the funding that they promised out of the 100 billion that they've been promising since Paris Agreement.
Mhm.
um, it's 100 billion, but they pledged the G20, the same colonizers are bringing now. They were suggesting that for indigenous peoples, we are pledging 1.7 billion, but this is still tied to
Hmm.
indigenous peoples and local communities. And so still nations like Sabanthos community, who, and she said correctly, that some of them no longer exist. They exist under other layers of ancestries, and so they're being phased out because of other issues that we can't blame anyone for now. But they cannot access this. How can they access this money anyway? So that is the question. And so moving forward, it's about loss and damage. How much have we lost, and who do we support? And for me as an indigenous person, I don't believe in the carbon trading. How can we commodify the hair and all this? So
Ah.
it's a funny thing anyway, and it's controversial. I know people are listening out there, but
But
it's
I
funny.
understand your perspective. I understand your
Ex-
your perspective.
exactly. So yeah, that was the experience, and I hope COP27 we try to look into that. Yeah.
That it's interesting that you sort of use that analogy um to describe carbon shedding, because what it feels like to me, and how what you described, your experience of that meeting or series of meetings, it feels like there is a system and a way of looking at the world that is so alien and apart from the way indigenous peoples look at the world, and that trying to fit ourselves and trying to fit remedies and ways of dealing with the trauma and dealing with conflict and reparation and all of that into that system, it doesn't feel like it's going to work because the system is flawed.
It is. It
The
is flawed because for us, and sorry, I'm not even cutting you short. It's interesting,
No, go ahead, go ahead.
because
I want you to
yeah,
talk.
but yes, for indigenous peoples, we are telling the rest of humanity that we are part of the human race, all of us. I mean the humankind. Let me use that word, and and it means that we are not just saying that it's for our benefit, it's for our benefit as the entire humankind. Look at the nature. Don't even look at our spirituality. That's different. Probably your spirituality is different. The way you worship, the ways of your people, the ways of your ancestors, it's different. You worship money or you worship something else, it's different. But look at the link to the nature. So we hear so many things like nature-based solutions. So what is not nature-based solutions, for example? So, so to me, I challenge anyone listening out there, because our time is almost out. The link, everyone should look at the climate change and think about the link of the humankind and nature. That's all. For certain wildlife, the flora and fauna can flourish as well. We know the marine life is getting. You guys live in most of our listeners today, I'm sure, live in Caribbean area, or and you see the marine life. You know how that is affected by climate change, and overfishing, for example. And how can we protect the coral reefs? So it's the nature and the humankind, and we have to coexist, sort of. Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah, thank you for that. Sabantho, so time ran away with us, or we ran away with time. I'm not quite sure which one it is. Um, so tell me in closing, is there anything that you'd like our listeners and our viewers to leave this conversation with?
Um, Basically, that regardless of what races or ethnic backgrounds we come from, we all together need to, respect each other, help each other's voices be heard. We can't live separated anymore. This is
Yeah,
2020, 21, going on to 22. Everybody's becoming more open, and you know, as much as we want to honor our own, we need to honor each other for us to do and get anywhere.
yes, agreed. I felt that. I felt that. Thank you. Thank you. Carson.
I think I wasn't listening. Yeah. Can you ask again?
No problem. What do
Yeah.
you want? What do you want to leave the conversation with? Like what's the final point that you want us to take home and to think about and to act on?
Thank you. I guess it was important to ask. I knew about the question, but I wanted to hear it well. So be be proud of who you are and let other people be who they are. That is the essence of living together in coexistence. It's a human rights thing. It's a human rights based social construct. Allow people, the indigenous peoples, say for example women, girls, all these intersectionalities that we do have in the society, be it colored people or the indigenous people or whoever, and Sabi has said it correctly, it's 21st century. Allow people to be who they are, and within this context of be proud of your, and I like this one, the way you have branded the festival, black consciousness. I was listening to reggae music today from the Caribbean, especially
Ah,
Bob Marley music. It's part of my collection that I usually listen to every day, and I like this, the Black Consciousness Festival. Be proud of who you are. Nobody should ever tell you you are less of anything. Uh, let's all coexist as humankind. Let's all protect the nature. Let's all be wary of our behavior in warming the planet, because if we don't take care of the planet, we will the human race will go away, and this world will always be there. The humankind thinks that they will still, I mean, they will when the world would go away with them. No, it doesn't happen that way. This is the
right,
nature.
right,
Yes, so
right.
that is my message. Let's all coexist. We're all part of the humankind, we're all part of the human race. And when the indigenous people say we want these rights, it's not that we're looking for special rights. No, it's those rights that everyone has their own right. Let's all coexist. It doesn't take away. It's like the table is always big. You come with your seat, you will get a space. If I come with my seat, I will get the same space. Leave
Yes.
the greed that has destroyed the way we live. So I can talk on and on and on and on, but that is the message. Thank you so much, Ruth. And to our
Thank you.
listeners, I just wanted to say one word to our listeners, that to our viewers online and those who will be watching the recording, that is the message. You may be listening to this message so many days after or so many years, but that still remains the message. Human being, the humankind, and nature. That's it. That's the whole thing. Thank you.
Yes. We're part of nature. We are not apart from it. And so if
Exactly.
we don't respect and we don't understand our place, we have to understand our place.
Exactly.
Nature might just put us in our place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so thank you so very much for that. Sabantho, I'm gonna be checking you out. We're gonna be talking or
Yeah.
writing, if that's what you prefer. Carson, thank you as well. We will be in touch. I am grateful for the opportunity to share with you and to hear your voices. And I'm still in awe. And I'd like to thank the Black Consciousness Festival as well for providing the platform and the forum for our voices to be heard in this way. So everyone looking, thanks for being here. There's so much other stuff that's going to be happening. Keep looking at the Black Consciousness Festival YouTube channel and Facebook page for amazing talks like this one. And power to each of you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this conversation at the Black Consciousness Festival. All of our sessions are available on our website, theblackconsciousnessfestival.com, and on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. All of our conversations are intense, fun, enriching, and may also be challenging as we explore different facets of our history as people of African descent. Remember, you can find more on the festival on our website, theblackconsciousnessfestival.com. Have a good night, good evening, good afternoon, and a good morning, wherever you are joining us from. And remember to walk in pride, power, and practice. Thank you.